So I'm gonna make some chicken noodle soup. It's raining outside, and I guess summer's almost over. So I'll show you how I do it. So I start with the vegetables. I'm gonna do it's called a Mirepoix. Some people call it a Trinity. It's celery, carrots, and onions. It's kind of a ratio of 3 to 1. 3 celery, 2 carrot, 1 onion. So I'll kind of show you what I mean. So just rinse these off. I hope everybody's feeling better and doing well. I had some time because again it's raining. So I'm gonna cut up the celery. Trim off those end pieces. If you didn't know, you can trim off that piece there by the nub and plant that in the ground and you'll grow another celery. So I'm going to cut up the celery. I do it on a bias because it tends to look nicer in the plate. So instead of cutting it just straight along the edge, I'll cut it at an angle. So try to get some consistency in there. This is enough for, I think it's 4 people. You know, you probably have some left over, but at least it gives you some, gives you enough for a dinner and then some. So this would be 3 portion of celery, 3% I guess. Then your carrots, you want to do about half that much. I might add a little bit more celery. So I've got a piece here. So got celery, I got some carrots. These are the little baby carrots that you get in a bag. It's just easier that way. I don't have to skin them or anything like that. So again, I'll do that same way. I'll cut those at a bias, and you get this nice kind of edge-looking piece. It's a little different, you know. Just gives you something different in your dish than just round, you know, pieces that you might find in like a can of soup. It just looks a little nicer presentation-wise. Chop those up, keep your fingers out of it. So there's that. And then we're going to cut up the onion. Use about a half an onion. The onion, you can cut it up diced, or I like to do with the soups, I like to leave it long lengthwise. It gives it a little more bite, I guess. You also don't have to leave it in the soup. You can kind of just score it and put it in the water, and then in the end you can take it out if you don't want onions in your soup. I tend to like them, and it's kind of good for you. So. So about half that, yeah, a little about, almost half, maybe a quarter of an onion should be enough. Throw the rest in the fridge for this half. I'm also going to cut up some potato. So this can all go in the same bowl. It doesn't really matter. I like to hand cut stuff. That's my preference. You can put it in a blender. Depending on how thick you want it, you can cut it real thick, or you can just leave it minced up and just put it in the soup minced. But I like to have a little more to chew on in the soup. You know, almost like a kind of a stew. At least you got some kind of meats that are in there. So it's not just a straight broth, so it's a little better for serving dinner. And this is what we're eating tonight. So I got my red potatoes. I leave the skin on because it's good vitamins and stuff in there. These I'll probably cut into like a medium dice, about that thick. Flip those over, so give it 1, 2, maybe. Yeah, 2 is good. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm not real worried about the. Try to keep them consistent in the same size, but I'm not really worried about it because it's a soup, so it's gonna all cook anyway. We're gonna leave it on for a while while it cooks, so they're gonna cook thoroughly anyway. But if you want to be real fancy about it, you can be a little more consistent in your thickness. A big thing in the restaurants is everyone learning to cut the same size, so everything cooks and looks consistent, and it's just better for presentation. I'll show you what I mean. So you see how all of those pieces are roughly about the same thickness. They're all gonna, in any dish, they would normally cook the same amount of time. There's not one piece that's gonna be undercooked and another one that's gonna be overcooked. That's what I mean by consistency. And so that's probably enough. Save this one. Kitchen. So I'm gonna rinse these off to take some of the starch out of them. Just leave them in water for now so they don't brown. All right, wash my hands. What else? So I've got some rosemary, some thyme, and some oregano. So I'm not cutting the herbs on top of all of that, and I don't really like to cut the herbs on the wood board because it absorbs a lot of that. So you know, it's dirty. I'll throw a rag on top of it for now. Clean my knife. Break these up. I'm not going to chop it up. I'm actually going to put these into I have a fish cloth kind of thing. What I use is somewhere. This is the wraps that you get from the garlic. So if you don't have cheesecloth laying around, I like to hold on to these when I buy my garlic. And then if I'm making a soup, I can put all my herbs in here, throw it right in the stew, and then I can take it out when I'm done. Yeah. I don't really need to cut these up. I'm gonna just fold them up like that, stick them in here, and you can go like this. You can hold it down there and go like this. And you've got your little bag of herbs. So I'll put my, I got some oregano already chopped up. I'm gonna stick that in there, and then you can see what I'm doing. There, so I've got my oregano, I've got my rosemary, my thyme, I've got a little tie here from like a bread bag, and just tie that up real tight. And that'll go in there. Alright, so this cutting board's done. I'm going to move to the other side. I'll cut up the chicken, I'll show you how I do that, and then we'll start making the soup. My whole chicken, you gotta use whole chicken because you need the bones so that you can get the flavor for the broth. That off a little bit. I like to rinse it off because there's a lot of the juices and the blood and stuff still on there. So nice, you know, cold water, you rinse it off, get some of that old blood out of there. We don't really want that in our soup. So going to show you how I cut a whole chicken up. You can use this for pretty much anything. I did it the other day when I made the chicken, the curry chicken. So it's pretty much the same steps. Make sure you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so start with the legs forward. So you're going to cut from the neck down to the butt. Look for the spine. Stretch it out, do what you gotta do to find it. And then just make your first cut into it. You'll find the spine. Keep the point of the knife down. Get your heel to the edge of the chicken and just chop right through it. The less times you chop them, the less you're gonna have pieces of bone shredded or anything like that, so you want to really avoid that. So just, real sharp knife and just give it a good whack and just cut through it once. I got a bowl in the sink, so I can throw half of that in there. We've got start to smell kind of nutty, like peanuts, and it will form into like a dough ball. And once you're there, you can put that to the side. We're going to use that to thicken the soup in a minute. You can also cook it right in the pan where you're going to put the chicken right into the pot, but I'm not putting butter as my base, and it tends to work better when you use butter. If you use olive oil, it's not going to give you that kind of pastiness. And then, like I said, you can cook this as long as you want, really, as long as you're moving it, and you can make it as dark as you want. I'm going to let it go a little bit more. And this is what we use to thicken the soup. A lot of people just do straight broth. I like a little thickness to it. I think it adds a little texture and flavor to the soup. Alright, and that's done. So we throw that to the side. I'll bring my pot back for my soup. Let that get hot again. Normally I'd be cleaning up as I go along, but I don't really want to take the time away from the camera, so I'll put off my evil tendencies to clean up, and I'll just keep going over here with you guys. This was a little warm already, but I'm just going to let it get a little hotter because I like to do, like I said, I like it quick. I like to cook the stuff fast. I don't want to sit here and wait for stuff to have to warm up and then put the food in and wait for the food to warm up. I like to hear it sizzle once it hits the pan. Got my olive oil. I can put the butter away. Flour can go away. So I can take my olive oil, give it a good clear bottom, enough to get it, around the edge of the full pan, so you got a nice even flow. And go ahead and dump your vegetables in there. Dump the potatoes in. Very well into the ends of the pan and heat resistant, and it's a little more uniform than using like a spoon or something. A little more resilient when you're moving from one thing to another. And we'll just let that saute real nice. At this point, it's a low simmer, and I'm extracting all those flavors out of there, out of the vegetables and stuff, sweating them really well. Some people do the chicken first and then take it out and then put the vegetables. I don't think it matters much because, like I said, it's a stew. It's gonna, or a soup. It's gonna boil for a while. So at the end of the session here, we're gonna get all those flavors out anyway. So it's not gonna make a huge difference to what you do. This way, I think it gives the potatoes a chance to cook too before you put the chicken, because the potatoes actually take longer than the chicken. And then too, this is a glass top, this is a steel pan, so steel doesn't scratch glass. So you're not going to scratch your stove top if you're moving it around and stuff. A lot of people are afraid to kind of do that, but you learn that in science. Certain things don't scratch certain things. Ooh, it's about to run over. The salt is helping extract some of the moisture from there, and you can see, I think you can see at the bottom of the pan there's a good bit of moisture down there. Once it starts to kind of stick a little bit to the bottom of the pan, you kind of know that it's getting to where you want it. And while I'm at it, I got a garlic clove. I'm going to chop that up and add it in here. Now we're getting kind of a good thing of stick. So the chicken's already in the pot. Got my vegetables in there. Now we're just browning off that chicken. Letting the chicken absorb some of those flavors from the vegetables. Down for a minute. It's on a good high heat, so we're getting that nice sizzle. Our salt and pepper are already in there. Got my little bag of herbs gonna go in there in a minute. Not that kind of herb. I know about some of them. As you do. You'll hear me say that a million times. For some of y'all that don't know why I'm like doing this, why I'm posting videos or whatever, I kind of just felt like doing it, but it's not like I didn't just kind of start cooking. I've been doing. I've worked in kitchens for probably over 15 years. I worked in a lot of hotel restaurants over in Orlando. So I've cooked for a lot of people. You know, I worked at the convention hotels right next door to the convention center. I cooked for huge events, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Sometimes tens of thousands easily. I did everything. Worked in delis. Did pizzerias, you name it. A lot of fine dining, a lot of French cuisine. I did a lot of Italian foods. I worked at if you ever been to Disney, downtown Disney, I worked for Raglan Road for a little while. It's a little Irish place down there, cooking Irish food. Really good place if you've never been there. Everything's cooked from scratch. Seafood's flown in from Boston, so it's really, really good food. Worked with Rosen Hotels for, 10 years. I opened Shingle Creek. I was there for a little while, opening up the restaurants there, did a lot of banquet work. You name it, man. I cooked for a Republican National Convention, fed Bill Gates one time, George Bush, who else? Tito Puente, which was a really cool experience. A lot of stuff, man, but I've been at it for years, and now I don't cook anymore unless I'm home. But it seems kind of something that I just do, and you know, I enjoy cooking. Not so much the politics and the business of it, but I enjoy cooking, and people seem to enjoy the food. So I figured I'd give you guys a little taste of what I do, or what I know how to do. I like cooking for people that enjoy food. You know, they're going to enjoy it. Not so much interested in the pay part of it. A lot of the dishes we made were, you know, $50, $60 a plate sometimes, and it's not your everyday people that can afford that kind of stuff. And, you know, I like to see my regular people eat. Worked at a church for a while, cooking for them, go feed the pastors and stuff. The longer this cooks, the more that chicken's just going to break apart and get a shredded chicken. So just leave them whole. It'll save you time and trouble with cutting it up. And then I'm going to take a little white wine. If you don't have it, you can use lemon juice. Or if you have a fresh lemon, that works just as well. If you don't drink alcohol, you can use lemon. That's kind of the better deal. But the white wine gives it a nice flavor. The alcohol cooks out of it, so you don't have to worry about it. Maybe about a half a cup. And that's just to add some flavor, deglaze the pan a little bit. Stir that up. Give it a minute, let that cook out the alcohol, let it cook down a little bit, reduce some of that moisture in there. Since I had to split this video, I'll go ahead and make I'm still editing the other one, but I'll edit this one as well, and I'll make one complete video from start to finish, so that, you know, I'll put some notes in there and stuff, that way you get the whole picture. You can use dry herbs when you go to put your herbs in. You don't have to bag it, you can just put the herbs right in the pot. But if it's dry herbs, you're going to get that in the broth, and some people don't like that, the texture of the dry herb. So it gives it takes away from the clearness of the broth. So I like to use the fresh herbs too. It gives you all the nutrients of the fresh herb. That's pretty well cooked down. Grab some water. And just kind of, when you go to add the water, just give it a little bit, because right there you're reducing the temperature of it. So just add a little, allow it to come back to temperature. To get yourself a boil, and then go ahead and start to add the rest of the water. We want to maintain that consistency of temperature, so when we add that water and it slows down that cooking, there's opportunity for bacteria to grow in that range 40-140. So you're right now below 140. You want to get it back to above 40 as quickly as possible, so that you can start progress towards the max temperature 160. If you don't have a thermostat, don't worry about it. You'll know when it's done. I don't expect you to know why. We'll talk about that one day. Maybe I'll go over the reasoning behind the temperatures and why you really need to maintain your food at certain temperatures. When you're done cooking, you want to get that food into the cold as quickly as possible. You want to make sure that the food is covered but still leaving room for it to breathe. So you're going to cover it really just to prevent anything from falling in it, but you need to allow that steam to come out so it's not condensating on the top of your lid that you'll have on your container. That condensation at the right temperature can drip bacteria back into your food, and you don't want that. That's how food spoils quickly. That's how people get sick from food illnesses and all kind of crazy stuff. So I'll cover that another day. It's, just know your temperature. 4140, 4160 for chicken, 4140 for pork, and you want to maintain that. If the food falls below 40, that's where you want to be. Freezing, cool. Once it goes above 40 and it's just sitting on the countertop, you're in a danger zone, and the potential for stuff to start growing is there. Above 140 is where you hold food so that it maintains consistent heat to it. Anything below 140 and between 40 and 140 is where your bacterial growth is going to happen. I think it's about every 15 minutes. So you don't want things sitting around and giving anything a chance to grow on your food, especially if you're about to eat it. Alright, so when you hear that boiling, I'm going to go ahead and start adding the rest of the water. Just add it slowly. We haven't put the thickening agent in yet, the roux, so I'm not worried about the soup breaking or anything. I'm really just worried about keeping that heat in there and make sure that it boils. So this is on max heat right now, and just keep it boiling. That boiling too is also going to extract the maximum amount of flavor out of this. Background music or something, man. It's kind of quiet in here. If I put background music, then Facebook will kick me off. I don't have media rights. Boil, go ahead and bring in a little more water. I'm going to fill this pot up to, I don't know if you see where the handle knots are. I'll be just below that with water. That way it gives you enough that when it starts to boil, it's going to reduce down, extracting the flavors, and then get you about a quarter of that down, and that's kind of where you want to be. So you're going to be left with enough broth. It's chicken noodle soup, so the way I do it, once this is done, I'll put a pot of pasta to cook, boil water, add my pasta, and leave that separately, and then once I start to serve, I'll take the pasta and put it into the bowl instead of in here, because I don't want to refrigerate it, and when you do that, you put your pasta in, it's going to absorb all the moisture, and you're just going to kind of be left with mush. So I cook the pasta separate, leave it separately when I store it, and then when I want to make it, I can add as much pasta to each bowl as I like. I think, I'm not sure, I was looking at whatever pastas to use. Some people use like spaghetti and stuff. We'll see what I come up with later. I think it's called petalini. It's kind of like a knotted, braided pasta. It has a nice dense texture to it. It works really well with soup. But you can put whatever you want. I mean, you can put elbows, seashells, whatever makes you happy. But like I said, cook it on the side. You can always cook your pasta off. Have a bowl of cold ice water in your sink. As soon as that pasta is done and comes al dente, dump it into the, strain it and dump it into the ice bowl, and you'll stop the cooking process, so it'll hold that al dente. And then you can just put it back in the ice in another bowl of water, put it in your fridge, and you've got ready-made pasta whenever you want. And it won't last a whole long. I think it lasts about maybe 4 or 5 days at the most. In a regular fridge. Restaurants, you might get a little more time out of it, but they tend to go bad a little faster, so you don't want to make a whole lot. but it's nice to have, you know, a little pasta on hand, because then all you got to do is heat up your broth and go. So you can even, once this is done, you can pour it out, strain it out, take everything out of it, and you have chicken broth. You've got cooked chicken, and you can add your chicken and make different recipes just from having that basic stock, which is pretty cool. In most restaurants, that's how you do it. You'll have a guy, he's called the I forgot his name, the sauterine, and he's basically the soup guy. He makes all the sauces, he makes all the soups, makes all the stocks. So he'll make big, you know, 5-gallon buckets full of chicken stock and beef broth and some other sauces. And when you go to make a soup, you just go from the bucket, and now you already have your broth made. You're not waiting to boil chicken and cook bones and stuff. So you can, you know, make different recipes really quickly from just having those basic mother sauces ready to go. So let's see if I remember. It was let's see if I remember the mother sauces. There's bechamel, marinara, of course. Alfredo. It's been a while. You got a beef stock in there. Don't remember. There's 5 of them. And once you have all 5 of the mother sauces, you can pretty much make anything. You can make any sauce, any soup, anything from those. I'll remember them one day. It's been a while. Just let that come to a boil. Just keep doing the same thing. Let it cook. Let it come to boil. Once it's fully at a nice rolling boil, I'll put the lid on with off to the side a little to let the steam continue to reduce. I think you can see all that fat on top that's forming. I'm going to let that form up a little bit more, and then I'll go in with a ladle and I'll scoop all of that out and throw it out. So that's nice clear broth. You don't want to be eating all that fat. I guess, I'm not sure, this is taking about an hour, maybe an hour, hour and a half. I'm going to let it cook for, boil down for like an hour, maybe, about 45 minutes. And that should be enough to really get it down to where I want it. The longer you let it sit, the more you're going to get those flavors out of it. So you can low temperature simmer and just let it boil until you get it down, you know, to a good amount of stock, and you have your chicken and stuff, and you're ready to go. Steam coming out, so I know it's still at a good safe temperature. It's not completely cold, and we just keep going until it gets back to rolling boil. My roux is over here on the side still, pretty nice golden color. I'm going to leave that to the side. Once this is close to being done and it's reduced down, that's when I'll start to add the roux. You'll go in there at a high rapid boil with a spoon, and you'll kind of work that roux in little by little until your soup starts to thicken up, and then you're ready to go. I'll have my pasta ready, and then I'll show you guys later on how I serve it and take some pictures of the finished product. But this is a really basic, simple, old school way of making soups. You can throw anything in here, Italian wedding soup, meatballs, spinach, di fellini pasta, and the same thing, chicken stock, and basically the same recipe. You can thicken it up a little. You can add, whatever you like to it. So you can kind of change up, from a basic chicken stock and chicken soup. You can make anything else. Egg drop soup, boil chicken stock, drop eggs into it. Simple stuff. That with a basic recipe gets you a long way. You can do a vegetable stock without the chicken and just throw a bunch of vegetables in there, and you'll get the same deal. Make a nice minestrone, some beans or something in there. 3-bean soup. You add instead of chicken, throw 3 beans in there, saute them up. Same, add some vegetables, and you'll have a nice 3-bean, a nice 3-bean soup. You can do a tortilla soup, chicken stock, cooked almost exactly the same way. You might add some seasonings like cumin and things like that to give it a kind of southeastern flavor, and then once it comes to the point of almost finishing, instead of using a roux, you throw some tortillas in there, some tortilla chips, and just let those cook, stir it up, and you'll use that to thicken the soup, and it gives it that nice texture and flavor of the tortilla soup. That's kind of one of my favorites, and you can do it with the chicken exact same way, you know, just how I did here, and just add tortillas in the end, you know, add some different flavors so that you have that nice, you know, that Mexican style flavor. Maybe some cayenne, you know, that kind of stuff. So there, see how the fat is starting to foam on top too. That makes it a lot easier to get out the to get it out when you start ladling. It's already 6 o'clock, but I was running late. I had some other stuff to do, so I'm running kind of behind on dinner today. But that's all right. My daughter's at work. She doesn't get home till 9:30, so she'll have fresh soup when she gets home. Lucky kid. So I add a little more water, and see I'm right under the handle knots there. I think you can see that one. And then my lid on top. Give it a little room for air so that the water's not condensating and boiling over your stove. And that's it, man. You let that boil for about 45 minutes. I'm gonna come back and I'll show you guys how I finish this up. All right, holler. Alright, so the soup has reduced down about a quarter of what it was before. And now I'm going to add the roux in to start thickening it. So as you stir, put it back to a rapid boil. Bring it up from simmer and just let it, you know, get to a rapid boil. And then your roux, you want to just add a little bit at a time. Kind of just drip it in there. You give it a stir so that it doesn't cook. You don't want like little balls of flour in there. And just keep stirring it nice so that it breaks apart. And you'll see the soup starts to get thick. And it's not too thick because you're not making gravy. Oh, this is pretty much how you would make gravy. So I already ladled the fat out of it. You just take a ladle or a flat spoon and just go across the top like that, and you can get the little pieces of fat that float up to the top. And you'll have a nice clean broth. I already have the pasta cooked. It's a bow tie pasta. And then so that'll get served into the bowl, and then just dump a handful of pasta into the bowl that you're serving, and it'll heat it up and it's ready to go. This is about as thick as I want. The longer this sits, the thicker it'll get, but I don't want to lose broth, so I'll add a little bit more. And you see how that slows down all of a sudden, it'll stop boiling. If that's how powerful that roux is. The flour and the butter. The flour helps to bind, or the butter helps to bind the flour, and then it helps it to disperse and the molecules get together with the chicken stock, and so it's a smooth consistency. It's not like big chunks of flour. Bit of butter. Once that just a tablespoon or a little less, a teaspoon of butter, and you'll notice right away that it'll give it a nice shine to the stock. You see how the chicken fell apart, so you're not really eating off the bone, but it's broken apart and there's some nice chunks in there. And that's it. Let's give it a taste. Throw that off, take a look. Smooth, not too thin, not too thick. It's a trick they use in the restaurant. You grab a white plate and you put it on a white plate, and you can see the seasoning in it. You can see the consistency of it, that if it's too watery or it's not thick enough. Yeah, just a little more room. As long as it's hot. This is really, really hot, so I can go ahead and add that in there. Bada bing, bada boom. So I'll go ahead and serve a little so you can see what it looks like. Get some of the bones out of there. Take a little pasta. What's cool is you can put as much of anything you want. You want more chicken, put more chicken. You want more pasta and less chicken, but you can kind of serve yourself the portion that you want. Let that sit for a minute so you can warm up that pasta a little. A little parsley flake on top for color. It's done. It's a chicken bow tie pasta. Alright, thanks for watching. See you later.